Welcome to the 2017 Iowa City Book Festival presented by the Iowa City UNESCO City of Literature. We would like to thank the sponsors who made this event possible, the City of Iowa City, the University of Iowa, the Iowa Arts Council, the Iowa City Coralville Convention and Visitors Bureau, Iowa Public Radio, and the Tuesday Agency. Between events, be sure to visit the book fair at Merge, which is at 136 South Dubuque Street. It's right next to the public library if you go out these doors on the Ped Mall. There you can shop with authors, artists, booksellers, and more, and enjoy complimentary coffee from local roaster Wake Up Iowa City. The vast majority of book festival events are offered without charge, but they are not free. Your tax-deductible donation gives us the ability to offer programs like this festival. So please consider supporting the City of Literature by texting the word book, so B-O-O-K, to 319-774-7669 and follow the link. So I can provide that to you if you like. Today we'll hear from authors Nathan Englander and Chris Adrian. Nathan Englander is the author of novels Dinner at the Center of the Earth and The Ministry of Special Cases, and the short story collections For the Relief of Unbearable Urges, and What We Talk About When We Talk About Anne Frank, winner of the Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award, and finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. His short fiction has been widely anthologized, most recently in 100 Years of the Best American Short Stories. He is distinguished writer-in-residence at New York University and lives in Brooklyn with his wife and daughter. Chris Adrian, to the far left, is the author of the novels Gob's Grief, The Children's Hospital, The Great Night, and the story collection A Better Angel. He is co-author of the novel The New World with Eli Horowitz. His honors include a Guggenheim Fellowship and inclusion in the New Yorker's 2010 20 Under 40 fiction issue. A graduate of the Writers' Workshop, he earned an MD from Eastern Virginia Medical School and studied theology at Harvard Divinity School. A practicing physician, he is an assistant professor of pediatrics at Columbia University Medical Center. Please help me welcome our authors.
On this rainy afternoon.
That's so funny. They just told us not to speak more into the microphone, but you can. We're with you.
Hi, and thank you everyone very much for coming out in the rain. This is going to be a conversation, but I asked Nathan if he would read just a little bit from the novel for us before we start talking.
That would be my pleasure. We're going to try to this is Chris is like a brother to me. We're going to try to, it's going to be super intimate, but we'll also try to remember to talk about the book. Usually I just complain or tell him neurotic things, so maybe we'll do some of that. I have my bag with me everywhere because I'm turning into my mother, but it has everything. I guess, should I go read up there or no? Yeah, I'll go read up there. It's so good to be back here. We grew up here, we did the workshop. Or as when I pulled into the driveway and my upstairs neighbor saw me moving and he's like, "You here for the jerk shop?" And I was like, "Welcome to Iowa City." Nonetheless, we were very nice. But anyway, yes, I will read for 2 minutes. Oh, back to fourth book. I have a prop now. I have reading glasses because the other choice is to die. Anyway, I'm going to... I'll really just read for like 2.5 minutes so you can hear my voice. And yeah, it's super late in the novel, but I'm sure we'll talk about it. It has like 7 timelines and 8 different stories, and I love my poor editor. There's no way to sum up this book that doesn't sound like a telenovela. It's like the general's in a coma, prisoners he's in jail. Anyway, so yeah, doesn't matter where it's from because there's literally like 11 timelines. How it had come to this, prisoner Z felt, had been set so very early. His Jerusalem, his Israel, his end. He'd been given it so long ago, back in suburbia, back in America. A birthright spoon fed to him in his Jewish day school classroom. A little boy with a heavy prayer book and a yarmulke like a soup bowl turned over and resting atop his head. It is second grade and they are running, the children with their arms outspread, they are flying. The desks are pushed together. The teacher's orders their lovely 18-year-old teacher, who would soon get pregnant and disappear. They know enough, the boys and girls, to love this black-haired lady whose even more black, more beautiful hair peeks out from under her wig as she pushes the big desk, the teacher's desk, toward theirs. She dresses modestly, but there is no modest when you are a beautiful, raven-haired 18-year-old second-grade teacher, flushed from trying to get pregnant in all your free time. Their love for her was different from what they felt for the others. It was marrying love and wanting to be her love, and it was youthful, energetic teacher love, and they would do anything for her, anything at all. So when after morning prayer, after marching into the room with their big green sidurim and taking their seats, when she'd stood and jutted out her bottom jaw and blown the hair from her eyes, when she'd said up, up, and raised her hands, raising the class so easily with them, Prisoner Z is no longer sure if she'd actually spoken the up, up at all. We are going somewhere and we are late is what she says. Where are we going? Asked Batya, whose English name is Beth. A smile from the teacher, a glimmer to the eye. We are going, my little Yiddelach, to Yerushalayim. We are flying right now to Israel. The Mashiach is coming and we need to get there. We need to help welcome him in. And the hands again are waving and we are all already following. Now push the desks together so we can get up into the sky. And when those desks are all together, a circle around the room, the teacher takes one of our tiny chairs, raising her skirt so we can see her ankle swathed in her scratchy gray tights. She places a foot on the seat of that chair and then climbs onto those child-sized desks. A teacher standing on a desk. It is glorious. She bends a bit at the knees and leans her head forward. The teacher then spreads her arms wide. She says, I am on an airplane. I am an airplane. We are all flying to Israel together to make Aliyah. We are headed to Jerusalem. We must hurry, hurry, a long flight, and the Messiah already on his way. And she takes off like that, flying from desk to desk around the room, tilting her beautiful covered arms on the turns. Come, she says, come. You do not want to be left in gullahs, forgotten in this Egypt. When the Messiah comes, our country awaits. And it is roly-poly Bensi who is first up, and then Mayor Aryeh follows, flashing his monkey grin. There are Devorah and Yocheved, Susan and Zev, and then I am on the chair. Prisoner Z feels himself rising. But with all those arms tilting and everyone running and howling and flying, I'm too afraid to join. And suddenly I am grabbed, and suddenly I am lifted. The teacher has got me, she is holding me, and she sets me down in motion, and that is love, and that is care. She holds on until my feet are moving and my arms are spreading, until I feel it, until I am looking down at the classroom below, down at New York, at America, until it all looks like desert and all looks like wasteland. Nothing but the emptiness that is the whole world outside what God gave us. I'll stop there.
So I've known you for kind of a long time, and as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, or how to start off, two memories of you came to mind. The first is, so I was a year ahead of Nathan. I was a senior.
I say, with workshop, it really is senior and freshman, and that's it.
And I think I actually have a first memory of you, which is seen when the workshop used to be in the English Philosophy Building, which is this door riot-proof asylum down by the river. We were on the fourth floor, and many people would take the stairs, so you wouldn't have to have that elevator, that 3.5-minute elevator ride of doom with Jory Graham, who was really intimidating to be in
and bangled
small space with. So I remember seeing you walk up and down the stairs before I knew who you were, and we had a friend of mine, and a gentleman who would become your friend named Aaron Cohen, who liked to play jokes and tell stories. And he told me and a number of other people that the drummer from the band, the heavy metal band Rat, had taken taken a sabbatical from rock and roll and come to the workshop. And I thought Nathan just had very dramatic, big, and to be envied hair. So I started off thinking that he was the drummer from the band Rat.
Yeah, it's for those of you who don't know Rat, it's Google Cher and Moonstruck. That's the haircut I had.
So the other, and then the other memory that came to mind was after I'd known you for a while, much later that year, I remember delivering the news of Yitzhak Rabin's assassination to you. Your mother, you're wonderful. We could have a whole separate conversation just about Nathan's mother, in which I would do all the talking and he wouldn't talk much. Nathan's mother had come to visit, and we were in the parking lot on Jefferson Street, and I forget how I had heard the news, but Nathan and his mother hadn't, and I
He's saying I forget how I heard because there was no internet.
But in that, and I delivered it not really understanding what the impact was, but I could read the impact in your face and in your mother's face when I said it. And it has occurred to me in thinking about it in the run-up to today, in the past couple of days, that you were already in a relationship with Israel and with Jerusalem, even before you went to live there. That's where you went after we graduated. And this novel, which feels like a manifestation of that relationship, has been sort of in you and with you for years and years and years. And even though maybe I can't say you were working on it when I first knew you, it wasn't very much longer after that it seems like it started to obsess your imagination and become a significant part of your life. So the first question, that's all to say, the first question I have for you is sort of why and how this novel finally now?
Sure, thanks. The nicest part about long friendships that become family, and families, people can read your books and just know they're like, nothing in here is made up. My agent literally wants to pop her eyes out. She's like, every loss of virginity horrifies me in a novel. She's like, they're all real. Anyway, but yeah. But I'm just saying, like, for Chris to actually remember the expression on my face that turns into a book, literally, it's 20 years later. That was November 7th, 1996. Number 4th? 95. There we go. November 4th, 19. It's good. They're taping that, and I was like, relax your brain. Oh, 95. It was the fall. November, right. I moved 1996. Exactly. Thank you. But yeah, 1995. Yeah. But that was it. But like, literally, like, Chris sees the moment on my face, like I was moving to Jerusalem for peace. For nothing else. I was so excited to be part of this process. The world was changing, and it's so hard not to get to political these days, but my point is we should get political, every second. But, part of what drives this question about writing this novel is, like, I moved there after that assassination. I'd spent a junior year there and a few summers. I'd spent the summer before Iowa and the summer before that November. I came back for a few months to get my degree because an MFA is so distinctly useful. You don't want to go anywhere without it when you could have one. You're not wasting a penny. No, this place changed my life, but we can talk seriously about that. But yeah, I came back that September of 1995 once again. But to get that degree, and I moved there, right. It was May 1996 that I moved there for peace, but it was just happening. Like, it was inevitable and unstoppable. And we start here now, and people say, like, oh, that's bananas, that's crazy. Like, time, I already made a joke about getting older. Once you can start to see history, and once you can start to see time, things that we talk about, what I'm saying, is we have these unbelievable hurricanes and the country's burning, like, you don't know what that was if somebody released the truth about fossil fuels in the 80s or 70s when the oil companies had it, or if we didn't have an electoral system meant to give power to the slave-holding states, and we've lost our second election majority winner in 20 years. Like, what if Al Gore, who cares about that, had won? You can't tell me what the weather would be 20 years later of this great country putting all its effort into that. You know what I'm saying? You can't tell me what it would be today. And I'm telling you with peace, it was happening. I was so nervous that I was going to miss it because I was finishing my degree. You know what I'm saying? I was terrified. It was starting without me. And again, watching it crumble all those years, watching everything started. And again, by the way, for the rest of this hour, whether I say Israel or Palestine first, flip them around in your head as needed for your politics. My point is, both sides, there are two sides. There are two responsible parties that fragment into 20,000 responsible parties. But yes, watching that piece crumble, and again, we can just start it anywhere. Sharon going up to the Temple Mount, Intifada 2 starting, watching everything that we were working towards be burned down in a second. And again, I wish I didn't have such easy metaphors here now. As you can see, human energy, we can do extraordinary things. We sent, men to the moon, and I don't know anything about engineering. I understand that their part, we brought them back. That's the crazy part, the slingshot part. The shooting there, I can get. But I'm telling you, you can do anything you want with like human capital and energy. It takes so few people to burn the whole fucking thing down. You know what I'm saying? We have a couple of 100 years of democracy here. It takes a few. I watched a few people burn peace down. Who doesn't in Jerusalem, on Il-Quds, Jerusalem, we can talk about realities too, want to send their kids to school and have them come home safe. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wanted peace, and I was there, and I won't tell you different. So yes, for almost 20 years, I carried that heartbreak around and wanted to write that book. But what I didn't want is a 900-page, diary or a 900-page diatribe. Also, till this year, I used to say, who am I? I'm not an expert, but that's, now I should head NASA, definitely the Department of Education. So now basically I could do, but during the time of composition, I used to say, who am I to lecture about Middle East peace? But literally, wait till I'm running this, I'm going to run that space. We're going to Mars when I'm in charge. Anyway, but all I'm saying is, I just knew what this book needed to be because we're sitting here in a library, which is no small thing. A separate subject. We'll do the hour on my mother, then we'll do an hour of growing up with religion. Jews and Catholics, that's one religion in terms of guilt and how it shapes a writer, then it's the same. They're different when you're praying. But you know what I'm saying? When I had my big theological questions that were torturing me and couldn't get answers, I wish I'd been racier. I had the best window in my bedroom. I could have just climbed out and run around the town at night and gotten stoned. But really all I did was ask questions about God that upset the rabbis. That was my rebellion. But I'm saying I went to my public library. I remember sitting home because they told me there was no one named Kierkegaard. I don't know how I said it, but I really wanted to read Kierkegaard. But anyway, they had other books. But, it just, the books that saved me were not the books with answers. They were the books that wrestled with questions. That, to me, is all I ever wanted, and all I ever wanted to deliver since. And for Israel and Palestine, this is a terrifying book for me and a vulnerable book, and it's so loaded, and never more have I written anything where it's yes, do judge a book by its cover. There's no one coming to this book that, who's willing to read it, who's not already have an opinion that's inviolable, that's not shifting. I just wanted to build a book where people would enter into the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Every draft of it was twice as long. I have 500-page drafts. I hope I gave Chris a shorter one when he read it, but it's 250. I wanted story and plot and character. I just wanted only that. Enter into the conversation. No sides, every side. Tell the story through story. And it took near 20 years to wait for the moment. Because I know there's a lot of writer folk in this room. I can see them, but we can do conscious or subconscious. I'm obsessed with what happens to dissociative states, how our synapses fire, how writing gets written. I can tell you the conscious moment when I was leaving my last book tour in Israel, and on the front page of the newspaper was the story of Asir X, prisoner X. X translates as X. I like to say that, X. Anyway, but prisoner X was on the cover, and thanks to Kafka, we have a term called Kafkaesque, which saves us about 7 minutes of this answer. But, this guy had been disappeared into the system. He was dead, he disappeared into the Israeli prison system, secret prisoner. But the only time we find about him is he's dead, and he's dead because he's hung himself from his cell. But until he's dead, he has not existed. He only exists once he's dead. And there's only a cell from whence to hang himself. There's nowhere to hang himself prior to the moment of successful hanging, and then a cell begins to exist. So the Kafkaesque part of my head wants to know how someone only begins to exist after they've ceased to exist, and a cell, that part. And the other part was he was so much like me, but slightly different, dashing. No, he was I'm American, he's Australian. He maybe got more Zionist Israel, I got more biblical Israel, but we both moved to Israel around the same time. He had moved to a country, that's a statement. He is clearly, diehard, adopted its ideology. He joined the Mossad, its vaunted, terrifying, spy service. He'd done deep cover, which makes me dizzy to think about how scary that is. And the reason he was in jail was because he'd become a traitor. And we all know why people become traitors. I love the real stories, the fake stories, the movies, the books. I'm obsessed with that. It's always, failure of character, personality disorder, some crazy slight, blackmail, presidency. That we know why everyone colludes with foreign powers. You know what I'm saying? Knowingly or not knowingly. Like, that's not even a question anymore. Like, we know it's done at least not knowingly. But nonetheless, I'm saying we know all the reasons people become traitors and flip. And I thought, what would it take someone that diehard, that dedicated, that driven to flip, because he cared, like out of empathy? What would turn a spy because he recognized the other side is my side? And that's when I knew, I waited 20 years and I was like, that's my guy. And then there was another part that takes place in Madison, 4 hours north, the subconscious part, but I shouldn't answer one question for an hour. Oh. You're nice. Thank you.
So maybe I'll take us back to the notion of entering the conversation. And the questions get a little weird. It may sort of touch on the structure of the novel, and then the notion of a sort of multi-perspectived novel. So a few years ago, in your last collection, you had a short story called Sister Hills. That I think surprised you, if I'm remembering right, by the way that people tended to react to it. They came up and sort of congratulated you for expressing in an imaginative way their sort of politico-emotional beliefs, that they felt that the story expressed them. And the striking thing about it was that people from absolutely diametrically opposed political orientations were coming up to you and saying the same thing. Which strikes me as remarkable in that it sort of reminds me hearing you talk about that made me feel hopeful about the notion, or the possibility of finding a different kind of sort of liberal, progressive moral compass that could not be reduced to relativism. So is there a way to see both sides without diluting them and robbing them both of power? And so to try and tie that back to what you were talking about entering the conversation, and also that the structure of the novel, the multiple perspectives, it feels like that the sort of moral solution and your way past that idea of, I don't want to just stand on a 700-page soapbox and yell at people, was just in a really risky, vulnerable way to disappear into the characters and find some way to fully imagine them, and so at some point that becomes the moral act, to take the risk of actually letting the character become human, and start to call the shots in some way, regardless of what they're of what side they're on. So if this is starting to add up to a question, I think it's sort of
I hear it.
The question is, was the structure a way forward, sort of both technically and ethically and politically in the project that you had taken on?
Yes. Yes. Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a million things, first of all, we have to break down, again, it's Iowa City, too bad, or I hope it's okay, but I'm talking little bits of process in there, but tick versus theme, you know what I'm saying? And we will not get through this without at least 4 to 7 minutes of Frank Conroy, Marilyn Robinson, Jim McPherson. Also, we're here. But Frank, he would kill us with tick. You know what I'm saying? If everyone in your books chortles when they laugh and scratches their ear, that's a tick, you know what I'm saying? You gotta have a different motion. You can't have them chortle every time, and in my personal opinion, don't have them chortle ever. Just laugh. It's fine. But then your themes, one becomes aware of them, and this is you start to see your own themes, you start to learn from your own work. There was almost a decade between my first and second book, and I really worked hard on the second one for the main reason, because literally people are what do you do for a living? And I'd always have to say, I write book, which was, But anyway, this part, to sit with my brilliant friend and we know each other's work inside and out and each other's heads inside, you start to learn about yourself, hearing from, others, and you start to become aware as your career goes, as you write, what's happening structurally. So back to the Sister Hill stories, I guess it's weird, it's what's Twitter for now in short bursts, but like I grew up in a black and white world. I can't handle gray space, and I can't handle injustice, and I can't handle hypocrisy. It obsesses me. So you're all welcome to look up here, and see, like, I'm not surprised. You'd be like, Jew, that's fine. But I'm saying that's not what I see when I look in the mirror. I've never written a word about Jews. I don't write Jewish books. I don't, what I'm saying? I write about people. That is the default. That's what people are to me. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm interested in is like these other, like what I can touch in my brain, like what I can see is this notion. Like that Sister Hill story ended up being like life-changing for me and allowing me to write this book in that, I just can't take it the way we manipulate things and make absolutes. You know what I'm saying? Where you can say like, I'm anti-gay because the Bible says I'm anti-gay, like to be that. And then I'm like, but I'm also anti-immigrant. I'm like, okay, but 2 lines down, it says stranger in a strange land. Like, not only you have to be nice to immigrants, you have to give them your shit. Like if they ask for your Lexus, you have to, so I'm like, you can have both wrong-headed positions, but you can't have them at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like those don't marry. You know what I'm saying? And again, I wish I didn't have such easy examples today, but like, you can say monuments are inviolable, and that means even monuments to slavery and oppression. We have to keep them. This is what I believe, that we have to have monuments to slavery, but then you can't also say our natural monuments can be defiled for like, you can't. You know what I'm saying? You can hold those positions and you have to say, I just don't care. But you can't sell them to me as being in agreement. It makes my head hurt. You know what I'm saying? They don't agree. You're either, like, Bible is your book, then live by the Bible. Like, if it doesn't bend, then don't bend. But, don't eat shrimp in front of me. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm saying I wrote this story because I watch in both countries. I wish we didn't have, and we could talk about dual realities, but I watched that there, and now we have so many things here that I didn't want to come from there. I wanted better hummus to come from there, But yeah, just watching the way things get used is I just wanted to explore the occupation and the idea of inviolable contracts and the way we use these things. And as Chris has already, explained so nicely, the story it was a story about the occupation, exploring what that means. Please enter into it. I just wanted to build it, and it functioned as a Rorschach test. It was bananas to me. Like, it was such a crazy thing to me, and it really made me, now I can put it into words, a decade later or whatever it is, and be like, oh, authorial intent versus interpretation. Like, we interpret what we read, but I'd never written anything so malleable, you know what I'm saying? Like, where people could really make it read the way they want. It's a right-wing story, it's a left-wing story, or having so many such support from the Jewish community. Most often, I'm right-wing, it's a left-wing story. Why'd you do that? I'm left-wing, why'd you do that? Anyway, but yeah, that really, really set up the structure. The 2 things that I'm aware of for this book, one was, empathy is in short supply. Like, I really wanted to explore the notion of empathy. Like, back to that idea, someone who was the age, a Palestinian or Israeli who's the age that I was when I moved there, when I left Iowa, like, they don't even remember a time where there wasn't a wall up between the 2 people. Like, I just can't even handle that. I talked about the glory days of the Second Intifada when we were really murdering each other, or First Intifada where it was more charming and we threw rocks and shot rubber bullets and killed each other less. And then people will talk about, like, Independence Day or the Nakba on either side and how friendly it was before and after. Like, I'm just saying it gets worse and worse. Like, empathy I wanted, and then this notion of, what Chris is asking with Sister Hill's, like, can I build a book where people can, it's like John Gardner, why books, I had, back to high school, I read this in high school. I went to Binghamton University, state schools, we got to support our state schools. Our tax dollars are for state schools, not vouchers. I wouldn't be here. Neither of us would be here anyway. But John Gardner, I read on moral fiction. I went to Binghamton just to be there because he died there. That's the closest I thought I was getting to a professor I want to study with, was being where his ghost was. But he talks about a moral fiction and this idea, and again, now we're already on to Maryland, where I feel like it's a moral act and an ethical act. And writers are terrible people, by the way. Don't lend them money. Don't ask them to babysit. Never leave a writer alone in a room with your spouse. I'm not talking about, like, day-to-day actions, but I'm saying you can't, if you don't understand good and evil, if your weights and measures aren't set when you're writing, you know what I'm saying? Then you can't do that work. But he talks about, a laboratory is sterile. A novel can't be sterile or it's not working because that's not real life. But that it is it's got to be a place to reflect on and test values, is John Gardner's thing, almost like a chemistry experiment, So yes, that story made me see what I wanted to build here. Oh, you're nice.
That idea of there becoming here. So I was last year. I was working as a palliative care fellow, a trainee in pediatric palliative care, and my boss was an Israeli man. Was actually an American Jew who had just come back from trying to build a pediatric palliative care program in Palestine.
Oh, is that book waiting for me at home? Is that person?
Oh yeah, that person.
Yes.
And he made as we sort of started our own downward spiral last spring and summer. He had this sort of running semi-joke that ended up being a sad joke, where his acquaintances from Israel kept telling him, "Now who's laughing at who? Who has?"
I have received that letter.
Whose politics is made up of who's in the clown car now? Big shot. So as with that in mind, and what you said about that, the sort of terror of actual political instability coming home to roost, if it feels, and I hope it does, I think it should, like this novel, like Dinner at the Center of the Earth, is actually a sort of if you've succeeded in making the gesture into the political and emotional, if you've succeeded in making an empathetic and compassionate gesture into that mess back in your other home, what does it feel like, or what does it mean? What do you think is next? What is it? What sort of gestures can writers, can artists make as things go down the tubes here, if they continue to do that?
That is a gigantical question. So first, I was going to say I didn't answer this in the first part of the first question. You're like, well, you answered everything else in that question for like 9 hours. But there was a why now element, and the why now is the further it recedes, the further it seems more impossible. That's my piece, and I want it back. You know what I'm saying? Like, not a joke. I want it back, and I want it now, and this is it. We just have to decide we can do what we want when we want. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's... I mean, as human beings, like we can choose. I was living last year in Malawi, in Zomba, Malawi, and that's the difference between America Power with like things you can say, oh, Netanyahu's doing this and that. A few million people, like right now when we cut aid, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, we're going to kill our own, like we can talk about taking, again, you can have whatever position you want. If you take, I'm not talking about giving health care to children. If you take it from them, children will die and you are complicit. That can be your position, but it's on all of us. But back to America Power and the politics here, we have so much more power. Like living in Zomba, Malawi, I'm like, wow, we left UNESCO, like we cut, aid, like if we cut food aid, like it doesn't, Israel's like contained. It's Israel-Palestine, as long as it doesn't go nuclear. But yeah, I'm more frightened here because you don't see the dominoes. Like, they're starving there. By the way, they're the most religious people that I've ever seen in the whole world who believe in global warming, because if your children starve to death, if your maize does not grow and your children die, I mean, speak in tongues. You know what I'm saying? Exorcism weekly at church, like not messing around Christians, they totally believe in global warming because the maize doesn't grow. But anyway, my point is, if we cut food aid, they die. Like, it's the echoes of, yes, it is gigantic, the politics of it. So I feel like now, that's the point. Writers, like, you're already corrupted if you think you're making a difference, except for Dennis Johnson, who I miss, I never got to meet him, but I love. There's two different writers' personalities. You have to be able to execute it. I'm on the road and I'm tired, and I say to my wife, like, maybe I'll do like Thomas Pynchon next, but cannot talk to anyone. She's like, you like to talk, So, but I'm just saying, I can't do the Dennis Johnson. It's the flip side of the outside thing, where like, it's one of my favorite quotes of his, like, what do you do? Is like, I save lives. Like, that's my favorite writer answer, Yes, it's life, he saves lives, or the palliative stuff, which makes me weep, which is so beautiful, helps people to go to a better place. Anyway, But yeah, just to now in politics, I guess it's happened to me before, which is you do your writing, you're interested in your thing. I really do feel like a pyramid. I mean, this is the first president we've ever had, or at least in 100, I think ever, who doesn't read books, Definitely no pet. First no pet in 100 years. But anyway, but I'm saying, I do believe books change me, that like the only thing you can think of that's maybe not corrupting to your soul as a writer is that maybe someone who thinks thoughts is going to read your book and maybe their synapses will refire. Because books are the only art form that changes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's only with writing where I think it's the supreme art form, you know, like it's the only thing that changes how we remember, like that forms memories. You know, you say, oh, when did that happen to me? I read that. Like if you say, when did that happen to me? Like, oh no, that was the bank scene in Dog Day Afternoon. Like go to a neurologist immediately. Like you've literally, you know, you have terror, like you've lost your mind if you're remembering movie scenes as your own. We will support you. If anyone here, don't be frightened after the talk. But anyway, but I'm just saying like books really do change you and change memory and have changed, you know, me. So I don't know anything what to do is except to tell a story, but you're talking about the politics of it and the now of it. I just think it's each of us in our own way, like our responsibility, I don't know what, to be, I mean, part of being society. That's why I can't understand. Like, I'm happy when I pay taxes. It only happens on book years. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a privilege. I use the roads, you know? So, but yeah, I guess the point, and then maybe, you know, you'll have another question or we'll go to audience questions, whatever. But like, the weird thing that happened, it's my last novel, which is my first novel, Ministry of Special Cases, which is also an Israel novel if you want to do that outside thing. It's also about someone disappeared. It's also about cities that turn on their citizens. And it's taken me a long time to see. I once called myself shy in a room like this and someone screamed out, "You're not shy," and that's when I learned I was private, which is different. But my dream of being a writer that I wanted so bad, the story I wrote to get in here that was like the first story in my first book and that I wrote into my first play was called The 27th Man. My story about writing was I had to set that in a Stalinist, you know, prison in 1952. You know what I'm saying? For me to go near, I had to go far. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. For me to get like naked, vulnerable, close, I have to go distance and move closer, move closer, move closer. I recognize now my Argentina book was also, you know, an Israel book. But I started this when I was, you know, upset about peace process stuff when it was still going. You know what I'm saying? It started this in Jerusalem in the 90s. You know, it took me a decade to write. And I used as a sign, just as a symbol of democracy's gone awry, you know, the loss of habeas corpus to me is central to that book, because habeas corpus, I don't know anything about history. Maybe that same person will scream out the right answer who helped me with my November dates. But seriously, but all I know is when they made habeas corpus, like you could, you know, run over people in your carriage and not stop. You could draw and quarter someone for annoying you in town. A good portion of the people of this planet were not considered people. They were to be owned. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't even consider all people then. We still recognize you have a right to challenge your imprisonment, you know? To me, that's the sign of a democracy's end. And then in the middle, like 4 years into my book, we opened Guantanamo Bay and we undid habeas corpus. We don't have it here anymore. So like, I wasn't making an American political statement. I was writing a book about Argentina that was really about Israel. And I'm saying when you write things, they better have everything in them. That was like a writing nightmare. It wasn't a secretly thinly veiled thing. So I think what Chris is asking, like, or as I hear it, I wrote this book about Israel-Palestine, and literally, as I'm finishing the final draft in Zomba, Malawi, the core like thesis of my book is here, which is, I learned in Israel, people wanting to broker peace to help, and I'm not talking about just where to park your aircraft carrier, which is part of it, and Israel's got a good fighting army, and you want them, you know, if you're a Western government, like this idea, like why Russia helps, or why, you know, Jordan helps, or America, or Saudi Arabia. I also think there's good people there, Egypt, like they want peace. It's good, you know? And I think they were talking, like I made a comment about vouchers, like it was two sides of a thing. Like anyone wants to come. I am anti-vouchers. You can be pro-vouchers. We're disagreeing about the same idea. But it became clear to me living in Jerusalem that I was a Jewish boy living in Jerusalem with the Temple Mount as my holy site, and my Palestinian neighbor, she is living in Al-Quds with Haram al-Sharif as her holy site. Like we were literally in the same physical space, but inhabiting different worlds, different realities, different histories. Not a joke, not a small idea. Like Chris and I saying, like literally as if we're in San Diego and you guys are in Iowa City. I'm not kidding. Like not an idea. And that, you know, maybe what you're asking, which is I don't know what a writer's supposed to do, but I didn't mean to be ahead of the curve here, because I can tell you right now, they asked if we needed AV material, and I said no, but I wish I could. This room will split. I look at the voting. This is Iowa, like it's Iowa City. We'll be more blue or more red if we go 10 feet that way. We'll be more red than blue. But there's surely, you know, and you know, and if I've offended you, thanks for not running out, you know, with my like political things. I get to be me, but I'm saying I could put up two pictures of two different inaugurations right now up here, and this room, it would definitely not be 100% some of us would say, we'd all be watching the other people say, the one that we're all going to pick the picture with more people in it, but we'll all be watching the people who chose the other photo saying, yes, the photo with less people has more people. And I'm not talking people who put that lie in the world or dissemble that. I'm saying there are good people who are going to look at that picture, and how can we not all choose the same picture? I'm talking about obvious different pictures, and I'm saying that is not a difference of opinion. That is what we now have separate news feeds, separate realities, like we have full separate realities in this country, and that is how I watched Israel burn, and it terrifies me to have it here.
I think that may be a good
On that
place
cheery note,
to ask
would you like to
folks.
tell a palliative care story?
Why don't we take some questions?
Yes, you didn't even give us the painful moment. Anyway, yes, sir.
It's not much of a question, but so what about fear?
Oh, that's really easy. I can do that one quick. I was not afraid in Israel when there was peace was happening, when stuff was, my neighbor just kept blowing up. It was bad. But I really do think,
Said it was muted.
I was young, and I don't know how I
on
feel
mute.
now. Like, also, maybe I get more selfish or whatever, but I was ready to die for peace. You know what I'm saying? I'm not ready to die for 30,000 gun deaths or shot at a country music concert because, I'm not ready to die for a lot of stupid things that we have plagues of in this country because my health care got taken away when we can afford it. Not okay with me, but if you're building something, peace, we were making peace. We were the majority. There were enemies of that peace. I wasn't talking about being an assassin. I'm saying going to eat hummus, walking to the cafe to write my unpublished short stories. If I was going to die for that, I was ready to die for that. Again, it was a different time in New York then, and I thought, you get killed in my neighborhood that I was living in, in New York, and I was like, that felt like nothing to me, because there was, gun violence in our city. I thought but peace I was ready to die for. I became afraid, terrified, was Intifada 2 when I understood that, Arafat was not trying and Sharon was not trying, and that the people who don't want peace are going to win, at least for the next, it's already 20 years. I didn't want to be right about that. Back to what Chris was saying. That's my buddy who stayed there. I keep getting those jokes on WhatsApp, when you're coming back, you're going to get a beach place, we're more secure, But that notion, yes, when I understood everyone was dying for nothing, that's when terror became terrifying. Prior to that, I was like, we are building something and you're going to have to kill me.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we can have a non-traditional second pause question. Yes, over here. But
Thanks. Just want to say I appreciate your passion and your intelligence and your capacity to tell a story that can move people. And I was not familiar with your work. I'm visiting family here, and it came up, so I
you
wanted
got
to come.
dragged.
But, because you're passionate, because you can change things with your words, and you mentioned if you could, you'd like to be the head of education, secretary of something like that.
Yeah.
But if you knew for sure that how we teach and what we teach in schools affects the brain in a certain way and isn't developing capacities that should be developed, would you consider, if you were presented with enough of the information, to use your words to kind of go after education here and globally in a way that could shift it so that actually kids are learning at a different age something that speaks to empathy, that develops capacities, that actually can help people see connections rather than division?
Oh, and just since they're recording it, that was a big joke about me heading the Department of Education. I want to do the EPA. Anyway, no. But yeah, also it's really funny, and my wife is, I don't know if her plane, she's going to parachute in here because she studies educational policy study, and she'll be like, literally, you can't be, you're more ignorant than I can imagine. No, I just think it's about models, models of empathy. You know what I'm saying? That's all. You know what I'm saying? Throwing paper towels at people dying with no drinking water in devastation. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even talking about the school. Back to that, and back to bridging, I can't stand tolerance, literally. Forget about tolerance, respect. But my family is so religious and I am so secular, and they, bend, they don't break their rules, but they understand me. And that's the thing, when I go to my sister's house, but that's why, because this country is so split on religion and all that stuff. It's not about that. You know what I'm saying? There's right and wrong. That's why Yigal Amir, who killed Rabin, as discussed, they'll say like, you're a radical, you're a radical. He's not a radical. He was like a regular religious kid at the normal. He was a law student at the normal. You don't get to become, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm holding Mike Pence to his religiosity while he abets this stuff. He's a deeply religious man who was doing horrible things. So I'm saying to you, it's not about religious and secular. There literally is, we can question it. By the way, this week I saw the former wife of the president said, I'm the first lady. And they put on CNN, not first lady claims to be first lady. We'll get back with who's first lady. That doesn't need our time. It's a fact. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's Melania. She's suffering. Look at her face, Anyway, but I'm saying to you, my sister's deeply religious home. She doesn't care about grades, like she cares about, they're deeply religious, but, true, I respect, I'm not using my family as a guy. I'm just saying, I go back to a religious community that I left and I see it. We both had problems. This is my point about fixing things. We both had issues with how we got religion growing up, and we both made better versions of them for ourselves. She's 10 times more religious, but her priorities are not, she doesn't her priorities are that her kids be nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I watch that. I have a kid now, and I raise my kid that way. So I'm saying to you, this is not about school. It's about everything. But yes, it is the models we see. Forget Trump, let's use Marilyn Robinson. I said that, like, not a joke. We're both here because of her, and I can put those words in Chris's mouth for sure, But I say it on the road when she's, out of hearing. I once did an impression of her in front of her here for like 5 minutes, which was both, boy, you're clapping. Was I waiting for a laugh? I'm like, she'll laugh or not laugh? Anyway, but she laughed. But anyway. But I'm saying, I really say that back to like my fictional models, that if Marilyn was behind like police glass 4 inches thick, I say that we could have been walked by for a minute when we got here, and I'd be the same writer. So I'm saying, I don't even think it's about practical things. I'm saying this comes from the top, and it's what we see, and what we, seeing abject greed or like, is it is damaging. It is damaging, us all.
We have time for one more.
I saw half a hand. Yes.
Can you talk about what it was like for you being here at the workshop? Or maybe how your writing changed over the few years?
Oh, how my writing changed? What it was like being at workshop and how my writing changed? Oh my God, this place gave me my whole life and my whole career and everything. So
My students asked me a similar question the other night. They asked, "Are people different?" And I had to think about it. And I ultimately, I'll be interested to hear what you say, Nathan. But I ultimately said no. We didn't really change that much. Our writing didn't really change that much from when we were here.
Oh God, yeah. I always say, first of all, voice is voice is voice. There's like digging. Yeah, that's my point. Like, I love that notion where I like got here and I was like, Chris, I was like, he's my friend, but I'm an extraordinary fan. I think literally he's like one of our great living writers, like not a joke. That's where we have a backup. We'll start at 2, but I have a new reader here maybe. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, but I'm saying like, but that idea, I remember reading his stories and being like, oh, holy shit, like this is where the bar is set. You don't forget those things, Kevin, let's take him out of the picture, but that's enough, his head is already, no. But no, like Kevin Brockmeyer, anyone read Kevin Brockmeyer? Like there was a story in workshop about, it was just half of Rumpelstiltskin. It was a story about Rumpelstiltskin who's been cut in half, like bisected. And I was like, I don't need to read past the first paragraph. I'm like, you're done. You're a genius. Like, But yeah, what I think is you have to learn to hear your own voice, find your own voice. Like it's all, what I love about it is, I just got a picture from Lauren Holmes. You should also all read Barbara the Slut. Like a Hunter class that has like 6, she sent me a picture of that whole class. Like we wrote here, the difference, the only way maybe Chris will talk about this change is we were mean as snakes. It was it was like, tough. We wrote as if there was one shelf in the world with room for one book on it. Like, I'm telling you. But we buoy each other now. But I have to say, like, yeah, if you could guarantee an original voice that they'd charge more money for the degree. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you don't know. Unlike sports, let me stand up and show you how small I am. There's a genetic ceiling. Like, no one's going to look at me and being like, MBA. Like, it's not, there's no amount of training. But with writing, it taught you to dig and stick with it. There's no amount, you can never know with writing. Like, you have to know that it's the pleasure of the work. Back to religion, I got the religion of Iowa in me, which is like, my job is to tell stories and that's it. But then you're asking about the change of, it's learning to read others. That's why I say it's the only thing in the world where if you're like, and there are those writers, there's two kinds of writers. I'm going to make truisms at the end. There's two kinds of writers, but one is the one who's like, I want to succeed, and it's only going to be enjoyable if everyone else fails. And then there's like the pure writer who's like, I'm just telling stories, whatever. But the way to get there is the same. Like I'm saying, generosity in writing, I think in all things really works. Like I read Chris so hard when he asked me to line edit, and then I learned to read myself by reading him. So, but what I learned here, and I'll use the Marilyn thing, is like literally I was 24 years old, looking like the drummer from Rat, newly secular, and I'd write a sentence. And Marilyn, you know, like literally the sentence would be like, I should wait here all day for you to show up at 3 o'clock when we said 3:30, that's a friend. You know, and Marilyn was like, there are all the information we need is in this sentence. Unfortunately, it's backwards and basically in Yiddish. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I learned to hear myself from her. And I learned to think that I think in circles. You need to be honest. I think in circles, I write in circles. My agent is Lebanese. And it literally say we're going to have to burn the manuscripts. It looks like she's a deep anti-Semite. I will never change. No matter what I'm writing, I just get back her reads and it says in the margin, old Jew, old Jew, old Jew. I'm saying if I have like a Turkish paratrooper or like a French, mime who talks, whatever, they all sound like an old Jewish woman in my rough draft. Like that's how I write, but I learned to unravel. So for 20 years I learned, because of this place, because of Marilyn, because of Chris, like point A to point B, like how to be linear, how to communicate. It's shared consciousness. And I really waited, it's a fine note to end on for me, but for this book, the circles, the cycles of violence, you could go home and put, in Wikipedia, Gaza War, they have names like movies, Cast Lead, Grapes of Wrath, you know what I'm saying? Like, these cycles of violence make me crazy because we act like we don't know what's happening. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can take you through wars. If you just read the New York Post, you will know, like, maybe we shouldn't go into this war. This is what happened last time, in American policy. So for me, I've been holding those circles in check for 20 years, and that really brings us back to the start, why this book has like 7 timelines and is utterly circular. I felt like there was no way to do justice to my heartbreak and to the hope that I feel for this circular conflict unless I let those circles loose. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.